Hey friends, what's up? How's it going? Thanks so much for stopping by for today's video. Today's video is on the book One Last Verse by Britt. This is the second book in the Encore Duet. I did a video a couple weeks ago on the first book, Final Serenade. And oh my God, I'm just kind of speechless about this book. This book took me completely 100% by surprise. I really liked Final Serenade. I like Nat's writing, but this book was it was quite different than Final Serenade, and that's why it was quite unexpected for me. I thought I had a good grip on Cassy and Frank's relationship. I thought I knew where we were kind of going. If you remember, the first book, Final Serenade, ends up in a cliffhanger, of course. I was like, oh my God. I mean, it was a huge cliffhanger, but the direction that this book took and all the feelings it brought out in me, and just the rest of their story, I'm like even getting teary talking about it. It was a lot, and I'm so down for books that make me want to cry. One Last Verse is darker than Final Serenade for sure. As we know, Frank is having some health complications. He suffered a very horrific car accident several years before and was trying to rehab and bring himself back so that he can get back together with his band and start performing again. He's a musician. Cassy, if you remember, is a music journalist. That's basically how they meet. So Frank and his band performed, and he had a little bit of an accident. It becomes very apparent that Frank's health is definitely something that Cassy didn't have a full grasp on. I love how Nat brings in this whole music industry insider information. She's very knowledgeable. My assumption is she's very knowledgeable because of what she does for a living, to be able to write this kind of story. So we know that Frank has some pressure on him to be able to deliver and needs to finish a contract that he has with his label. The band has the contract with the label. We know that Frank is the front man. He writes all the songs. His best friend Dante, who is also in the band, is a prominent character as well. I have to say, Dante confused me. He continued to confuse me in this book as well. I just never could put my finger on him. I didn't feel like I got to know him. I would feel like I saw a glimpse into his personality, and then he would do something like really jerky and I didn't like him again. So it was hard for me to wrap my head around Dante, and I think that was really the point with him when I look back on the story. He's a pretty important part to some things that go down with Frank in this story, and it just takes this whole different turn. It just sucked me in. I couldn't put it down. I was on the edge of my seat. I was in tears. I was trying to savor reading it, which I know I'm like a glutton for punishment, but that's how much this story just wrapped its arms around me and was not letting me go. Cassy is literally, I wanted to say, you know what, I almost said Cassy is such a rock star. And isn't that funny? Because Frank is the actual rock star in this book. But she just has this, I love the way Nat wrote her. She just has this underlying, really incredible strength. And she doesn't even know it. She goes toe-to-toe with these really serious, life-altering events that happen between her and Frank. And it brings up these demons that she had in herself that I don't know if she really knew she had them. Of course she knew she had them, but as Frank starts to this downward spiral, And she's there trying to help pick him up and do the right thing by him. And she's trying to be a good girlfriend, and she's trying to support him. And yet they're very honest with each other. She doesn't mince words with him at all. And she keeps giving him another chance because she loves him. And she knows that there is this amazing person inside of Frank that is just lost right now. I just so adored how Cassy was. There was a couple times, I have to say, I will admit, that I was like, Cassy, just drop it. Just ignore that. Just move on. You don't have to call him on every single thing. But then that wasn't her. And I started to understand that a little bit more about her. I started to understand that she had these demons, and everything that Frank was doing was bringing them to the surface. And isn't that the way life is? We don't realize that we have baggage until somebody starts unpacking it and going through it. Do you know what I mean? Frank continues down this spiral of drugs, alcohol, self-loathing, self-pity. His body hurts. He's got some real problems going on in his life. Can't seem to catch a break. Is trying to numb the pain. And those are things that are like poking at Cassy. She wants to help him be better, and yet knows that she can't enable him. And for her sanity, she can't allow him to do the things he's doing and her to be there and watch it, because it's poking all those horrible demons that she has inside her. Something I also really liked about Cassy was her work ethic. We get a lot of that in Final Serenade, and I loved that about her. She has built her in her young years. She's not old. She's like in her younger 20s. She's built a reputation. She takes pride in that reputation. And Frank is like, doesn't even to mean to do it, but is like ruining that layer by layer with his actions, and her people starting to know that she's involved with him. But I really did love that about her. At one point, she decides to even step away and focus, step back and like focus in a different direction on a project that her and her partner in Rewired are taking on, which again, let's talk about that for a second. So interesting, such an interesting part of this story. They discover a young woman named Isabella, and she is in a wheelchair. She had, without going into too much detail, because I don't like to give all the story away, but she wasn't always in a wheelchair. She had a promising singing career ahead of her, happened to be in an accident, thus is now confined to the wheelchair, and the label dropped her. And it's like, as a reader, you sit there and you're like, how could they do that to her? Whether she's in a wheelchair, she can still sing, but yet she's not the image that the label wanted to put forward. And that's another part that I spoke about before, about how Nat brought in the music industry and how cutthroat it is. And I liked this part that Nat was trying to give us with Isabel. I highlighted a couple of passages that really showed me where, and I have a million highlights in this book. I should just, literally it's like almost the whole book, I swear. But it showed me where Cassy was, and it's the time where I realized, and it's chapter 2, so it's early on, where I realized how Frank was pushing her buttons and what she was trying to deal with on the inside, knowing what was going on around her. And this is what she said. I felt it then, the tears of despair pooling at the back of my eyes. I didn't know what triggered them, the incident itself or the fact that I hadn't made it into the ambulance, but the sudden shift terrified me. The unknown terrified me. The helplessness terrified me. It had been my 16th birthday when my mother shared her wisdom with me, the motto I'd always followed. Don't ever let a man in to the point where, when he's gone, he's taken a part of you with him. She called it the breaking point. Tonight was exactly that. The moment I'd been avoiding at all costs, and it happened the moment the ambulance left, taking Frank, taking my sanity, and taking my heart along with him. The entire night felt like an episode of a badly scripted reality show with an unlikable, unstable female lead, me. She couldn't help herself but fall in love with him. I mean, she was already a fan of his, and then she met him, Frank, not Frankie, and she couldn't help but fall in love with him, but she was almost like a little mad at herself about it and was really trying, not like she was fighting it, but she wasn't really acknowledging it, but you could see it happening. And then this all happens. Oh, Frank continues to be a man of few words. His actions in this book started really speaking for him big time. Their relationship is cracking left and right. And yet she's trying to be so strong for him. And he's trying to let her be, but yet he can't help the despair and he just can't help himself. And this was a part that really broke my heart. I want to be alone for a while, he said when we reached the studio. I halted. My heart unhinged at the sound of his words. Tilting my chin up, I asked, should I pack? Frank looked at me and confusion came into his eyes. They roamed my face in search of something, but I had no idea what. No. Then came a slight shake of his head. He pulled the studio door open and disappeared inside. I was left standing there by myself, no explanations, no apologies. A small fraction of me resented Frank Wells at that moment because my gut told me that this was the beginning of the end, our end. I just didn't want to believe it in my gut. For once, I wanted my instincts to be wrong. He wants her in his life, but yet he's just on this downward spiral. And as much as I liked Cassy and I rooted for her and I was so impressed by her, Frank broke my heart. Oh, see, I'm getting teary about it. You could just see it happening. You were like, no, 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 don't do that. And she kept standing up for him and trying to be strong. He made me really mad in this book and broke my heart. There's so much emotion and turmoil and defiance with him. It was hard for me because I was emotionally attached to them. I was emotionally attached and understood Cassy on a deep level, having some experience with what she was experiencing with Frank in my own life. The unpredictability and the not knowing and the coming home and there being, they're drinking again, they're doing whatever again, and all of that living with somebody that's addicted to something has. You could see the writing on the wall with him, and I just didn't want it to happen. Right when I thought that this book was all going to be really serious, and it is all serious for sure. I mean, you know what I'm saying. When I thought that this was where we were going to be the whole time and that that's where the story was going, that it was going to be, dark and deep and emotional. There's this part in chapter 5 where I was like, oh, we're going here now. And when you read the book, you will know what I'm talking about, but holy smokes, one of the sexiest scenes I have ever read in any book. Just like I was looking around being like, I'm just reading this by myself. And I was blushing reading it. It was super hot. This hotness on these pages that she wrote, Lord. There was a funny, not funny thing that happens to Frank and Cassy, and it's not a funny situation at all, but it literally showed us the sign of the times in that, of course, Frank is very famous. Paparazzi follows him everywhere, right? There's a situation where he shows up someplace and he's drunk and he's falling over, and of course there's a bunch of people around and they all pull their phones out and they all are recording it. Somebody makes a meme out of it or a GIF, one or the other. I can't remember now what it said. It was a meme or a GIF. Anyway, isn't that the state of life? we can't do anything these days without being recorded. You could be at Target and be in the back of somebody's TikTok. You know what I mean? And I thought it was so well placed in the book, and it was sad because it's a sad thing. But don't we constantly, you know, send each other gifts and you know, watch funny and post funny memes, you know? And it was so sad though, because it was not a good thing. It was not a shining moment for Frank Wallace, but so something that would happen in this day and age. Chapter 10, I was crying. And I literally think I highlighted almost the whole chapter. So I could pull out, but yet I highlighted almost the whole chapter. But there's this point, and I hope I'm not giving too much away. I don't think I am when I say Frank is on his knees in front of Cassy, begging her. And it just affected me so emotionally because I knew at that point how low he was. I had been reading it for 10 chapters, and I knew at that point how hard Cassy was struggling to do the right thing, not only by herself, but for him. And knowing that she just couldn't do it anymore. And yet he's on his knees in front of her. Oh my God. It was too much. I was so sad. I was so sad. The good news about One Last Verse is not only what an incredible story, what an incredible journey, but there's a happily ever after. Thank God. After the heart-pounding stress and ups and downs and all the love and despair, all of the emotions I felt in this book, and I didn't know. I didn't know if we were going to get a happily ever after. I really didn't. I kind of thought we weren't going to. I'll be honest. I thought, oh no, here's that book. I haven't read one in a really long time that doesn't give it to me. Because, you know, I really like my happily ever afters. I need them. Life is too hard. I need to read them. I thought this was going to be the book that didn't give me one. But we do get one. We do get one. I loved how the epilogue to the book was all about Isabella and Cassy and Levi's project. I wanted to see that through. I wanted to know what happened with it. There's so much I loved about this book. I would highly recommend you reading this duet. Let me know if you have read Final Serenade in the comments below, or One Last Verse. This is now the third book I have read by NN Brit, and I am such a fan. I just adored Frank and Cassy's story so much. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.